underpinnings of Gentes. That sounds pretty ominous, doesn't it? But just a reminder, you probably remember this from any of your theological studies. When Thomas wrote his Summa Theologica, he's basically using a very simple model, which is, God sends forth and then we return. So it's a sending forth and then it's a return. And okay, so that's the dynamic, sending forth and return. Basis, that's very simple, St. Thomas. Now, the reason why that's really important is because that's the nature of the Trinity. So the Father sends his Son, the Father and the Son sends the Spirit returns to the Father and the Son, we return to the Father in and through Jesus by the power of the Holy Spirit. There's this dynamic. And what really struck me was Tony Gittins. Tony says that mission is who God is and mission is what God does. So in other words, we're talking about the very heart of God. We're talking about being inside that community of love that we call the Trinity. And mission is God's identity, and mission is God's job description, to use our very flawed and limited language. So, what do we talk about here? Well, we're talking about obedience, and I had two images of obedience that I wanted to offer you. And the first one that I have is, complying with the authority. That's the drill sergeant, right? He's shouting at you, he's telling you what you want to do, he's lording it over you, right? And then you kind of fear and trembling, you respond. That's responding to the command. What about obedience that's born out of love? I stumbled across this image of Joseph and Jesus. And of course, this is the year of St. Joseph, and I have a particular devotion to St. Joseph, so this captured my attention. But I want you to look at this painting for a minute. Who is obeying who in that picture? In other words, there's a mutual obedience that's going on. Joseph obeying the needs of Jesus, Jesus obeying the strength and need of Joseph. There's a mutuality there that you don't see in the command. So what does that mean? Well, I'm using the scholar's understanding of the underpinnings of St. Thomas. He uses this image by Purbal. I don't know who Purbal is, but he uses this image. Christ not only commanded the clock to go, he has also wound it up. It is charity that obliges, not the command. I found that very moving. Thomas Aquinas actually uses this image. It's not only like a servant proceeding from his master. I was having a hard time finding images, but then I thought of slavery. This is from the film, The Life of a Slave, 13 Years as a Slave or something like that. And this is a very disturbing image for me, and I think for all of us. Slavery is really a scar on the history of the United States. But slavery to any person can be, and probably is, demeaning. But slavery to God is not. In other words, Jesus as Lord has the right to command us and does. But rather than leading to slavery, that leads to freedom, because it is in God, in Jesus, that we find our completion. So that's the paradox. That's the Paschal mystery right there. So the church's missionary activity is not like a servant proceeding from his master, really, that has an emphasis on the command, but also, and perhaps more so, like a flower proceeding from its tree. A flower proceeding from the tree. Our yes to mission is our yes to God. It's our emergence from the vine into the world. So that's my little bow to Thomas, the Thomistic underpinnings. It was actually Yves Concord who wrote the first chapter of Gentes, and Yves Concord, of course, the famous Dominican, one of the scholars for Vatican II. And you can see that indeed this notion of the missionary nature of the church as being rooted in the Trinity is reflective there in the first chapter of Gentes. So we're going to take 3 minutes of personal reflection time. I hope you enjoy the music. And what's that say to you? What did you hear while I was talking?